Okay, it looks like we're live. Got some strange indications going on here today, but we'll just go ahead and figure that we're normal fivers. It's a Monday. Welcome to the program. I'm Charles Friedman. News Talk from 9 to noon here on SantaCruzVoice.com. No, it's a Tuesday, isn't it? I forgot yesterday was Labor Day. And of course, Labor Day, we all know that on Labor Day, no one does any labor. So neither did I. So I took the holiday. I hope you had a good holiday. It was roasty toasty over the weekend. We got back to normal temperatures today, for which I, for one, am glad. There are events discussed from over the weekend, so let's get to that. First thing I need to do, let me see here. I got distracted from my usual morning routine, so I've got to take a moment or two and bring up my call screen. Let's get that done quick like a bunny. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that does it. And the call lines are live. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. 265-5050. That's the number to reach the program. Always only too glad to hear from you, so give us a buzz. Remember the rule. Well, a couple of rules. Number one, your call has top priority, so when I see your call come in, I'll drop everything else and grab it. That's first thing. Second thing, you have the latitude extended to you. You can raise whatever topic you want to raise on the program. Well, I've got things I'm going to talk about, but you don't have to feel limited by that. If you want to call and bring something else to our attention, you do that. You go ahead and do that. Okay, so what do we begin with today? Well, the president is... I'll get to that later. President Trump is... I don't know. He's kind of... moving in circles the way I see. I'm talking about his international relations at the moment. The latest story, of course, is that Mr. Xi Jinping has invited heads of state from India and other places, but India is the primary one. They got Iranians there, they got North Koreans there, all kinds of bad actors. But to have India standing shoulder to shoulder with those bad actors is not a promising thing. And you might say, well, why would that happen? Well, Donald Trump, unfortunately, has not, shall we say, cultivated a relationship with India as he might have. Now, this is something that's, it's been on again, off again for years. During the period of the Cold War, India, under Indira Gandhi, who was certainly nobody's idea of a sweetheart. Anyway, India during those years allied itself more with the Soviet Union than with the West and the free world. Unfortunate. After all, India was British for many years. One would have expected them to remain in the Western orbit. Maybe that's why they didn't. Oh, well, we have to react. We have to move away from the British. It's kind of like Trump derangement syndrome. They had British derangement syndrome. Whatever the British do, we've got to do the opposite. Well, that's not really a very smart way to figure out your policy. But the United States of America during those years wasn't much more perspicacious. Of course, India's biggest concern during those years was its relationship with Pakistan. And the United States chose to ally itself with Pakistan against India. So, in geopolitics, you look at this, okay, Pakistan is a much smaller country, much less powerful. India at least retained some window dressing of being democratic and presently went back to being a democracy. Pakistan has always been an autocracy, usually a military dictatorship. Its government changes when one generalissimo overthrows another generalissimo in a military coup. So for a number of reasons. It's unfortunate that the United States was on the side it was of this particular conflict. This began to change, and changed fairly dramatically, during George W. Bush's presidency. I'm often quite critical of Mr. Bush, but credit where credit is due. One of the things that George W. Bush undertook was to repair and establish and repair our relationship with India. He realigned American policy in that part of the world away from Pakistan and toward India. Smart move. After all, Pakistan is, what's the old thing about the weak horse and the strong horse? Pakistan is a weak horse. India today is surging. It has the human and natural resources to be a major player. If they would simply be a little more capitalist, they could be China all over again. Pakistan, it's a dead letter. Another, I don't know, I don't want to say a failed state, but goodness gracious. It's just, nuclear weapons attached to a donkey cart. So, George W. Bush undertook this realignment and had gone a long way towards establishing a better relationship with India. Mr. Obama did not pursue this as assiduously as he might have, but he certainly did nothing to reverse it. Mr. Trump, during this administration, his second administration, has behaved punitively toward India. And I'll be honest with you, I'm having a hard time figuring out why. He's imposing some of his most punishing tariffs on India. He says, well, they're buying Russian oil. I don't like that. Well, the major buyers of Russian oil are the Chinese. So he beats up on India. Mr. Modi, the head of state of India, can see all this. And he says, okay, if the Americans are going to play hardball, so will I. So the next thing you know, he shows up making smiley face with Xi Jinping. This is how this international minuet is danced. Is the damage permanent? Nothing's ever permanent. That's the way these alliances and counter-alliances continually ebb and flow. But I would hope that somewhere somebody is whispering into Mr. Trump's ear that bringing India into the fold is a lot better than having them outside the tent urinating in, if you follow my thinking on that. 831-265-5050, the telephone number. Oh, dearie me. There's a couple of things that I wanted to get to today. Let's see if I can find what they are. Ah, yes. Mr. Trump has, the coverage of Donald Trump on this program is so, well, I would like to think to some of you it might even be unpredictable. There are times when I have words of praise for Mr. Trump and his policies, and there are other times when I offer him scathing rebuke. Recently, and we haven't talked about it much on this show, it hasn't been talked about much at all, really, but I'm hoping that there is more to this than meets the eye, ear, nose, and throat. President Trump has moved significant military assets to the coast of Venezuela. Last night I was privileged to see the dictator of Venezuela, the communist dictator of Venezuela, offering all kinds of bluster and, I've got 4 million militiamen here who'll grind up the Americans like hamburger if they try anything. It is obvious that Maduro is scared to death. And so he's showing his teeth and rattling his saber and doing everything he can to try to kind of like the puffer fish. You ever seen a puffer fish? They swell up real big so that, they look more formidable than they are. Mr. Maduro is not formidable. I was encouraged, I guess it was 3-4 weeks ago, not that long ago, There was a video that I happened to watch of, I cannot remember her first name, a woman named Machado. She is the leader of the Venezuelan opposition. And she was basically calling openly for President Trump and the Americans to come to the aid of Venezuela. Maduro was saying, gunboat diplomacy doesn't work out well for you. Well, it's like anything else. It works out well if it's done properly. And if it's botched, it's botched. How do you botch it? Well, you botch it like you did with the Bay of Pigs in Cuba. You plan an operation, and when the time comes, you commence the operation, and then you pull the plug on it in the middle of it and leave people exposed. Whereupon they become sitting ducks, whereupon they become dead. Dead ducks. And at the end of this exercise, not only have you failed, but the autocracy you sought to challenge has been strengthened. What's the old thing? If you're going to strike at the king, you better make sure you kill him. And also, that which fails to kill me makes me stronger. All of these things are true. That's why, again, that's why these are old sayings, is because they're true. If they weren't true, they wouldn't get old. How do you do it right? Well, you do it right like you did it in Chile in 1973. When Salvador Allende was overthrown and Augusto Pinochet set up a government there, there were no American forces involved in that. There were American agents. Certainly CIA was active in Chile at that time. But you were able to get the military in line and other elements of the society and pull off essentially a coup d'etat, which replaced Allende and instituted a new government. The results of that government, in terms of both politics and economics, were favorable. But bear in mind, that does not stop the modern left from decrying this as a horrible thing. The same as they do the deposition of Mossadegh in Iran, which was a tremendous victory for the West and for the Iranian people. Can you imagine? Yeah, as it is, the Ayatollah came in years later. What if some regime of that nature had held power in Iran right from the beginning? And Mossadegh was in league with Stalin. He would have aligned Iran with the Soviet Union. So we're in a situation where the left continually maligns Western efforts to promote its own interests. Come up to Venezuela. There is absolutely no credible way to put the case that Nicolas Maduro and his dictatorship are legitimate. The last elections for a National Assembly in Venezuela resulted in a two-thirds majority of anti-Maduro deputies. The last presidential election resulted in a vote which, by many international and neutral observers, went something like 2-1 against Mr. Maduro. But he didn't care. He simply pulled, the old Chicago style, declared himself the winner, and remained in power. There are a number of Latin American nations that specifically do not recognize his government, recognize the opposition as the legitimate government there. So if President Trump decided to do something, shall we say, more decisive in Venezuela, this would not be seen as Mr. Maduro is trying to couch it. I think you go home, the usual. They're trying to impose rule on us. As a matter of fact, the idea is rather clear that this would not be an imposition. Rather, instead, it would be a liberation. What's the current situation? President Trump this week sent a guided missile cruiser, the USS Lake Erie, and a fast attack submarine, the USS Newport News, steaming toward the Caribbean. They're scheduled to arrive next week near Venezuela, joining 3 amphibious ships, 3 destroyers, and another attack sub in the vicinity. This is serious firepower. The amphibious vehicles are the USS San Antonio, Fort Lauderdale, and Iwo Jima. They reportedly carry 4,500 troops, including a Marine Expeditionary Unit of 2,200. The naval maneuvering has Nicolas Maduro worried, and he probably should be. Since February, President Trump has designated 9 Latin American cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. 2 of them are Venezuelan. One of those, the Cartel of the Suns, is personally directed by Maduro. A rumored U.S. presidential director to the Pentagon this month instructed the military to use force against the cartels. You see, this is the... I'm glad that I'm sharing this with you. I had forgotten to mention this. This is the pretense that Mr. Trump has set up. Everybody knows that he is doing his best to interrupt the flow of fentanyl, cocaine, other poisonous substances into the United States. And once again, Venezuela has stopped being a producer and exporter of oil. Instead, they have switched their product to these drugs. Their oil industry has fallen apart because let's face it, the oil industry, the technology, the infrastructure, etc., these require constant upkeep, maintenance, and people who do that have to be capable and qualified. In his administration, Hugo Chavez and then Nicolas Maduro have purged the Venezuelan oil company of these capable, qualified people because they were not politically beholden. So they replaced them with loyal apparatchiks who didn't know what they were doing, and as a result, the Venezuelan oil industry's output has nosedived. So traditionally, people think of Venezuela, okay, yeah, they have a lot of oil there, they make a lot of money off of oil. That is no longer true. They still have a lot of oil there, but they don't make any money off of it because they can't produce it and export it. That ability has deteriorated. So what is the new export product of Venezuela? Fentanyl, cocaine, meth, whatever other poisons you could think of. So when President Trump characterizes Mr. Maduro as the head of a drug cartel, this is not fiction. This is not straining credulity. This is a statement of objective fact. A rumored U.S. presidential directive to the Pentagon this month instructed the military to use force against the cartels. Secretary of State Rubio sent a March message to Maduro to keep Venezuelan hands off the oil-rich waters belonging to neighboring Guyana. Another story there. Next door to Venezuela is Guyana, a smaller country known best over the time for Jonestown and that mess, but that was a long time ago. The big news recently in Guyana is that its territorial waters have revealed significant petroleum deposits. Guyana is in good position to become a wealthy country, or certainly a lot wealthier than it has been. Chavez, sitting next door, said, "Oh, you found oil. That's nice. Thank you very much." And he has essentially made every move he can to simply, invade, conquer, and occupy? Take over these offshore deposits. After all, his own oil industry is crumbling. Why not grab a new one? So this is one more way in which American action here could be seen, and would indeed be, upholding legitimate prerogatives of other governments. Discreet American strikes on narcotics labs in Venezuelan jungle wouldn't take that much hardware. Neither would adding deterrence to defend Guyana. What might require this many high-value U.S. military assets, on the other hand, is an effort to pressure Mr. Maduro to abdicate or perhaps oust him, even without boots on the ground. Has Mr. Trump made a decision to take that step? Toppling Mr. Maduro is a worthy goal. He lost last year's presidential election to opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez by 70% to 30%. And today, even greater numbers of Venezuelans want him gone. He's running a criminal organization out of Caracas that traffics in human beings, drugs, and weapons. His closest allies are Russia, Cuba, China, and Iran. His regime has worsened Venezuelan privation. More than 8 million have fled the country, triggering a humanitarian crisis across the Americas. His government sows Cuban-style revolution in the region. Venezuela's democratic opposition claims it has specific intelligence indicating that elements of the military are prepared to break with Maduro comandantes by refusing to obey orders. Democracy advocates have the advantage of a unifying figure in President-elect Gonzalez, who is currently in exile but could quickly be sworn in to stand up a new government. If that's right, perhaps the U.S. military assets nearby could convince Mr. Maduro it's in his best interest to leave rather than fight. His claim to have a militia of more than 4 million who will defend him is not credible, given his unpopularity at the polls last year. I've got to admit, I saw that, I guess it was, a couple of weeks ago. Maduro, when he first saw that all of a sudden American forces are massing off of his shores, I have called out a militia of 4 million men. I'm thinking to myself, who do you think you are, Donald Trump? I mean, Mr. Trump is known for outrageous hyperbole. Just overstating things tremendously, sometimes to his detriment. But, it's just one of his habits. Well, here is Hugo Chavez claiming he has a militia of 4 million when he might be lucky to raise a tenth of that. In recent days, he has sent warships and drones to the North Venezuelan coast. Things could get bloody, particularly in the south of the country if the regime's drug trafficking brigades and army diehards dig in. Mr. Trump has run hot and cold on support for the Venezuelan opposition. He backed National Assembly leader Juan Guaido as interim president in 2019, at least initially, but lost his nerve when the plan didn't go smoothly. He has issued sanctions to keep oil companies from working out for the regime, but also issued carve-outs for Chevron when pressed by lobbyists. A half-hearted operation to remove Mr. Maduro that is unprepared for armed resistance is asking for trouble. If the U.S. encourages Venezuelans to stick out their necks only to abandon them as it did Cuba at the Bay of Pigs 6 decades ago, would do the cause of liberty in the country more harm than good. I'm reminded of Hungary in 1956 when America and the West called upon the Hungarian people, rise up, throw off communist domination. They tried, and the next thing you know, the Red Army rode in, and the West did nothing. These are some of the more pusillanimous moments in post-war history. I'm reminded of George Bush Sr. After he stopped Desert Storm, oh no, we can't depose Saddam Hussein. We weren't sent to do that. And then a few days later, a week later, he's calling on the Iranian people, or the Iraqi people, you do that. That's your job. You rise up and get rid of Saddam Hussein. Well, Saddam Hussein's army was no match for the Allied military, led by the United States. But when it came to beating up on a bunch of defenseless civilians, they were just fine. And there is no way of knowing how many thousands of Iraqis died because they followed George Bush's encouragements to attempt to rise up and throw off a bloodthirsty dictator who had just had his fanny tanned and was looking for somebody he could beat up on. So ghastly incidents like this have happened before. They're virtually unthinkable. You look at this and you say, how could you be so dumb? If you're not prepared to go to the mat, then don't call out the tyrant. The tyrant will act as a tyrant. If you're not prepared to stop him, don't wave the red flag. Save innocent lives instead. So that's the point that's being made here. It's military wisdom. Battle plans go out the window the moment the fighting starts. If the U.S. isn't committed to finishing the job, or if it isn't backed by intelligence linked to allies inside Mr. Maduro's military, an intervention might not be worth the cost of Venezuelans and U.S. defense capabilities elsewhere, which are already spread thin. But a Venezuela free from Nicolas Maduro is in the U.S. national interest if it can be done. The key here, backed by intelligence linked to allies inside Mr. Maduro's military. This was the reason that the coup d'etat in Chile succeeded, is because the coup makers had their organization set up, had their ducks in a row. If it is Mr. Trump's plan to depose Nicolas Maduro, and I hope so, this is something that if Mr. Trump decides to undertake it, I will be full-throated in my support. But he would be very foolish to undertake such a thing without first making arrangements inside the country. It would seem to me that with modern electronic communications available, etc., this might facilitate the process of setting up an underground organizing resistance, getting people on the same page so that when the opening gun goes off, things can happen quickly and decisively. And that is it's not just the best way when you're dealing with somebody like Maduro. It's just about the only way. Okay, a little past, half past. Let's grab a break. We'll be back presently. Still looking for our first phone call of the day. Why don't you take a chance? 831-265-5050.
The Santa Cruz County Fair opens Wednesday, September 10th with FMX Rampage at the Grandstand featuring Adam Jones, X-Game gold medalist with his action team. Thursday, it's the Outlaw Mariachi. Friday, it's the White Album Ensemble. Saturday, Red returns, a Taylor Swift tribute band. And Sunday, the Chata Show, and that evening, Los Dinos. And our drone show at 9 o'clock each night. Pre-sale tickets and information at SantaCruzCountyFair.com.
The Santa Cruz County Fair.
When you need help escaping from an abusive relationship, call on the Angel.
Hello, I am attorney Angel Hess, and I am ready to help you. Whether you or a loved one needs legal protection from an abusive spouse, cohabitant, or neighbor, I will help you. I have over 7 years' experience working as a lawyer protecting others from abusive relationships.
Stop the abuse now. Call on the Angel, attorney Angel L. Hess at SantaCruzLegal.net.
Cannabis is one of nature's most beneficial plants. Hello, I'm Jenna. Treehouse Dispensary, we use information about cannabis to build community. Listen to Carly.
Thanks, Jenna. For those who wake up in the middle of the night, Treehouse suggests a THC CBN chocolate edible blend like Sleepy Time from Sensi Chew. Sleep the night away.
For answers to your cannabis questions, ask your friends at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive in Soquel, or ourtreehouse.io.
What's your family eating for dinner? Chef Ben here at the Back 9 Grill and Bar, where you can pick up family dinner that feeds 4 to 6 hungry people. Family meals include a full rack of ribs, a whole smoked chicken, pound of pulled pork, and plenty of barbecue sauce. Served with a full quart of baked beans, coleslaw, macaroni and cheese, dinner rolls, pickles, a side of onions, and for dessert, brownies with a pint of Mary Ann's vanilla ice cream. Call and order your family's dinner about 15 minutes before you want to eat. See you at the 9.
At 9:37, welcome back. News Talk continues here on Santa Cruz Voice with yours truly, Charles Friedman. The time, I just gave that, didn't I? Don't get redundant, buddy. Okay, let's move on to something else. One of the things that we have had a light shown on quite a bit lately, the Federal Reserve. President Trump is jawboning, browbeating, attempting to convince the Fed to lower interest rates because, well, that's what he wants. And the latest development, of course, one of the members of the Fed, Lisa Cook, has been dismissed by the president for political reasons. Well, no, it appears that she gave him a reason to dismiss her. To be quite blunt, what she did was commit mortgage fraud. She has 2 residences, one in Michigan, one in Georgia. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of people who own more than one piece of real estate. But when you apply for a mortgage, one of the things you're asked is this a primary residence? And it matters. A primary residence gets favorable treatment. Less of a down payment required, a lower interest rate. Thousands of dollars are involved. It seems that Miss Cook claimed both the Michigan and the Georgia residences as primary. Now, there's a problem there. You can only live in one place. Oh, you might spend time at the other. But, the question, where are you registered to vote, for example? And obviously, if you are registered to vote in both places, then you're committing a federal crime. So this is, on the face of it, an offense. Now, Ms. Cook claims, it's a clerical error. I made a mistake. Well, if that's the case, then maybe she really isn't capable of being on the Federal Reserve Board. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons. The law says that the president can dismiss a member of the Fed for cause. And there are plenty of, plenty of examples in the past where presidents have relieved people for cause when there was no criminal indictment, no conviction, but something like this, that, what's the idea? And if you're foolish enough to do this, then you really don't belong on the Federal Reserve Board because you make a mess. So Mr. Trump is being criticized now by people, and I'll admit I have a little bit of skin in this. Say he's attempting to subvert or attack the integrity, the independence of the Federal Reserve Board, to make it more subservient to the will of the President of the United States. Well, the problem is that Mr. Trump didn't start this. Like so many other things, Mr. Trump's opponents and detractors try to make it sound as if, here's something we've never seen before, some terrible thing we've never seen before that Donald Trump is responsible for. Alyssa Finley elucidates, it's hard not to gag over the dirges in the press for the Federal Reserve's independence, or the encomiums to Governor Lisa Cook, the Biden appointee Trump fired last week, who has become a martyr for a cause Democrats didn't care much about when they ran Washington. How the future of the Fed came to rest on Lisa Cook was a front-page New York Times headline on Saturday. Please. Democrats during the Obama and Biden administrations tried to co-opt the central bank to drive their political agenda. The difference is Mr. Trump is doing so brazenly and with brass knuckles. Start with the 2010 Dodd-Frank Act. It required the Federal Board of Governors and its regional banks to establish an Office of Minority and Women Inclusion to assess the diversity policies and practices of entities they regulate. In short, Democrats required the Fed to examine the banks to ensure they were sufficiently woke. During the 2020 campaign, Joe Biden called for expanding the Fed's dual mandate, that is, supporting maximum employment and price stability, to include racial equity. That would mean the Fed would have to conduct monetary policy with the aim of reducing racial economic disparities. The central bank created a version of such a mandate in the summer of 2020 when it decreed that maximum employment was a broad-based and inclusive goal. As inflation heated up in 2021, Fed members cited this elusive goal as a reason not to raise interest rates. Democrats in Congress also exhorted the Fed, keep money easy. I trust you'll never lose sight of the fact that millions of Americans are dependent on the Fed continuing to support the economy's recovery. South Carolina Representative James Clyburn, a counselor to Mr. Biden, you mean political godfather to Mr. Biden, told Jerome Powell at a June 2021 meeting. Maxine Waters, Democrat of California, who led the House Financial Services Committee, praised Mr. Powell for supporting Congress's big COVID spending packages. That's quite unusual for a Fed chair who is usually more cautious and more careful about expenditures, she said. Yes, it was. Mr. Powell, whose first term as chairman ended in spring of 2022, was eager to be reappointed. It's hard to believe politics didn't figure into his decision to keep money loose in 2021, not until Biden renominated him. That November did Powell acknowledge inflation wasn't transitory. Remember that? Oh, this inflation, this is just going to, it's a few-week thing, it'll go away. And commit to use our tools to make sure higher inflation does not become entrenched. It's also hard to believe politics didn't influence Mr. Powell's December 2020 move to join a network of central banks and supervisors for greening the financial system. A group of 114 central banks and financial regulators whose objective is to use monetary policy to promote leftist climate objectives. In other words, to waste money and destroy productivity and wealth. Would he have done so if Democrats hadn't seized control in Washington in November 2020? The answer is evident by the Fed's move to pull out of the climate alliance days before Mr. Trump took office in January. Mr. Biden sought to influence Fed policy with appointments to the Fed. Sarah Bloom Raskin, whom he nominated in 2022 for vice chair of bank supervision, had called on the Fed to redirect capital from fossil fuels to green energy by using its regulatory power to influence bank lending decisions. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin scotched her nomination. Ms. Cook's appointment was no less political. She lacked monetary expertise. Her academic scholarship focus was almost exclusively on racial inequities. In 2020, she joined a Twitter mob pushing for University of Chicago economics professor Harold Uhlig to be removed as editor of the Journal of Political Economy because he criticized the defund the police movement. Traducing leftist orthodoxy isn't a legitimate cause for getting fired, but never mind. House Democrats continue to press their racial obsessions on the Fed by passing a bill in 2022 that would have directed the Federal Open Market Committee to exercise all duties and functions in a manner that fosters the elimination of disparities across racial and ethnic groups with respect to employment, income, wealth, and access to affordable credit. Mr. Biden endorsed it, but it died in the Senate. How is this anything but politicizing the Fed? True, Mr. Biden didn't publicly try to dictate monetary policy, unlike Mr. Trump, who has demanded lower interest rates, but some Democrats did. Senator Elizabeth Warren warned in July 2022, just as the Fed was starting to lift rates, that likelihood overzealous rate hikes trigger a recession is growing. She hammered the Fed throughout 2024 to reduce rates. It obliged ahead of last year's election. Given the Fed's record, can anyone really blame President Trump for suspecting central bankers or trying to help Democrats? I will be quite frank with you. I have thought about this too, and I see it that way. Primarily, the size of the rate cut. This was a half-point reduction, not a quarter point, a half point. And at the time it came, it was utterly unwarranted by any economic conditions that I could see. Interest rates at that point should have been left untouched. But the Fed did what it did. Oh, we've got a call. Let's grab that and find out what we got going here. There's the thing. Okay. Good morning, Evan. How are you doing?
Hey, Charles. Yeah, appreciate it. Good morning to everybody, too. Hopefully you had a great Memorial Day. Lisa Cook's topic real quick, the mortgage fraud. I find the system's a bit broken. No centralized oversight. Mortgage applications are handled by private lenders, not a federal database, in which I think is problematic. What's your thoughts on that, sir?
It's interesting you should make that point. There was a Wall Street Journal editorial last week that took exactly that ground and went further to say, what about federal agencies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who underwrite many of these loans? If somebody claims dual private primary residence, as Ms. Cook is accused of, or has evidently done, she incidentally, she has never denied this. She's never said, no, I didn't do that, not even once. So I think we can take it that she did. She said that it was a clerical error, rather, instead. But you're raising a different point. You're saying, well, if there's any reasonable oversight on this, then nobody should be able to do this. And frankly, I think that's a very good point. Unfortunately,
yeah, I just find it a bigger problem than just her. But my second thing I'd like to get your thoughts on, Santa Cruz Sentinel had a interesting headline. Classic cars will still need a smog test in California after lawmakers reject Jay Leno's bill. Have you read on that, sir?
I didn't see the most recent note on it. It's unfortunate.
Oh, okay.
I was familiar with the story. I had featured it on the program earlier. Frankly, I'm not surprised. The fanatics who run our state legislature are such that, who cares if you've got a Chrysler 300C? You have to have it smogged. That's just kind of silly, because there aren't enough of them. I mean, these cars, obviously the fact that they're classic, they're rare, they're collector's items. I don't have one. You don't have one. And I'd like to have one, but I don't. You get the picture? I mean, this is not only a matter of personal taste, it's also a matter of affordability. This is a boutique hobby. And it's one that people who cannot participate in it themselves are at least able to enjoy by going to a concours and looking at these cars and seeing them being run, etc. It's something you can do vicariously. I have enjoyed this myself. It's a lot of fun. You go to Pebble Beach, not Pebble Beach. You go to what's the name of that track they have down there? I'm getting old. Anyway, I've seen the classic car races there. They're fantastic. The state legislature in this particular case, I think, is being its usual narrow-minded pinhead itself.
Just the reason why I brought that up, you seem to bring up that a lot, your past shows, and no, I'm a very classic car person. I love classic cars. I kind of have a mixed feeling on the subject, just based off of what I did a little bit of research on, the fact that these classic car owners do have some form of loopholes that they don't have to do a smog, but then they get to drive it around whenever they want to. It's a little bit interesting, but no, I'm on board with you, sir. They probably have some underlining thing here, and this, to hurt these classic car owners. And no, I'm not on board with them for sure. But I appreciate it, sir. I just wanted to get your thoughts on those two subjects, and yeah, I think we agree on both subjects. I appreciate it. You have a great rest of your show, and hopefully you get some other callers in.
Thank you. Have a great day. Hope you
Thanks
enjoyed.
again, Charles. Hey, you too. Bye-bye.
Hope you enjoyed your Labor Day weekend, as did I. Okay, great. Good to hear from Evan. And he always has interesting questions to ask, so I'm glad that we had that opportunity. Yeah. While I'm thinking of that, automobiles are definitely a 20th century thing. Just as horses and carriages were 19th century. The automobile was a 20th century thing, and today the automobile is drawing to an end. Certainly, automobiles that were fun to drive or that were interesting to drive are pretty much over and done with. The last couple of cars I've had, power steering, power brakes, automatic transmission, there's really everything done to insulate you and separate you from the driving experience. And of course, I was reminded my first vehicle was a 1949 Willys Jeepster with a Ford V8 flathead in it, which I purchased off a used car lot in Monterey for $400 and drove for many, many years. Oh, I must have put well over 100,000 miles on that car. And, I got to know it. I got to know its idiosyncrasies. I got to know its strong points, its weak points, how to drive it, where to put the front wheels to avoid the potholes, and, all these things that go into really driving a car. I drove that car. And when it came to maintaining it, I did a lot of the work myself, the simpler stuff. I'm no classic mechanic, but when it came to simple tune-ups, hell, I did my own. Those days are all over now. Teenage boys used to get a hold of a car, hey, we're going to rebuild this thing. We're going to have some fun with it. We're going to put a carburetor on and do this thing. Nowadays, what are they doing? Drugs, video games, I guarantee you, something less constructive. And what gets me is parents used to gripe about the kids working on the cars in those days. They didn't know how lucky they were. It's a wonderful thing for young people to be doing. Some of them probably stuck with it and wound up being mechanics and making themselves a very, very good living over a career. I was talking to Wally Kennedy the other day over in Freedom. He said, one more year and I'm going to retire. And, his garage, his one-man show over there on Freedom Boulevard, he's made a great living, helped a lot of people. But, of course, working on cars is nothing like working on cars used to be. Nowadays, you have to invest in all kinds of expensive equipment in order to service an automobile. It used to be you had to have a tool set, but for God's sake, nothing like the huge capital investments you have to make now. And it's not a matter of, is there another way to do it? No, there isn't. You have to have these machines. And as I said, the cars are no fun. The car I drive now, driving is no longer a pleasure as it once was years ago. Driving nowadays is a chore, which I am becoming more and more to dislike. Oh, if I have to go somewhere, I do. It's not like I lack the ability to get in the car and drive when I want to. But the idea of actually going out for a ride for the sheer pleasure of it, don't make me laugh. Okay, I interrupted my conversation on the Fed here. We were almost done with it. I was mentioning that I believe Mr. Trump is correct to believe that the Fed actually did lower interest rates in 2024 in order to aid Kamala Harris' campaign. If the courts let Mr. Trump fire Lisa Cook, his appointees, assuming the Senate confirms his replacements, will have a majority on the Fed board. So did Mr. Biden's appointees. If the Fed bows to Trump's whims and inflation revives, voters can hold Republicans accountable, but spare us crocodile tears over the Fed's independence. This is what I worry about. What's the old thing? Beware of getting what you want. Mr. Trump is screaming bloody murder for the Fed to cut rates. And this is not the time for that to happen. Inflation remains persistent. Oh, it's way down from that 9% nonsense, but it's still running consistently over the 2% benchmark that the Fed itself has set. And until it gets below that, inflation is a concern, by definition. So would I raise interest rates at this point? Hell no, no need for that. Just leave them where they are until we get a favorable number on inflation. And needless to say, it goes without saying, if inflation rekindles under President Trump, that will be a political disaster for him. A political disaster. Because one of the reasons, possibly the biggest single reason, that Trump was returned to the White House was because people remembered his first administration. Prosperity, low inflation, very, very good economic times. During his campaign last year, Mr. Trump promised again and again, elect me, I'll bring prices down. So far, he hasn't done that. They're not rising as much as they were, not by a long shot. But as for any relief from the escalations of the Biden years, no, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that. And if inflation were to start up again under Donald Trump, well, let's just say the political consequences for him and for the Republican Party would be devastating. Devastating. Okay. We're between, gosh, I wish I had that clock. Oh, well, I guess I just don't deserve it. Let's see here. A little fun. Oop.
Yeah, you can teledoc that. From
Hey, I'm Brett. He, him.
Hola.
Hola? Yeah, that's cultural appropriation. That ain't it, Chief.
Really? Isn't Chief cultural appropriation too? And secondly, I'm from Cuba.
That's awesome. I love your sandwiches. You know, it is pretty sad that those Cubans don't really appreciate the great social programs they've got. Am I right, Chief? I mean, person, Cuba person.
Great social programs? What are you talking about?
Well, you know, like take healthcare, for instance.
Yes, we had healthcare, but it mostly consists of us rubbing dirt in our wounds. But my grandmother was able to build this pretty cool wheelchair out of an old washing machine.
You must be mistaken. I learned all about Cuba's excellent social programs in college.
Is that right? How long have you been in college?
Half a semester. So yeah, I'm pretty much an expert on socialism. In fact, I'm inviting people to the meeting my group is having. Socialists undermining capitalist knowledge.
Ay, ay, ay. Tell me what else you've learned in college about my country, Mr. Expert.
Bernie Sanders taught me that Cuba has great literacy programs.
Yeah, we used to have to write, I will obey Fidel Castro 100 times every morning.
Also, Bernie taught me that the poor rose up and they stole the means of production from the ugly rich people. That sounds amazing.
We didn't own anything with regards to production. But what we did have, we had a 20-year-old anemic donkey named Gus. I do miss Gus, but he was delicious.
Okay, by the way, how did you end up in this dystopian capitalist country anyway? We've got it really rough here.
Hey, did you order the orange mocha frappuccino?
Oh, yeah, that's me.
Okay.
I hate when they look at you like they expect a tip. Anyway, yeah, how did you end up in this terrible place?
We escaped on a raft made out of a mattress and inflated surgical gloves.
You mean to tell me that you came to America on purpose?
No, not on a porpoise. On a raft.
I don't understand how somebody could flee Cuban paradise and come to this oppressive, totalitarian hellscape.
I can tell you, we didn't have any of those in Cuba. That I can guarantee you.
What, you mean that in Cuba you guys only have like iPhone 12s? No, don't tell me. iPhone 11s? No, that can't be right.
You young people don't have any idea what socialism is like.
My ride's here. Yeah, Mom. Yes, I'll be there in a second. Gosh, I'm gonna be late to the Antifa protest. So, do you want to learn more about why North Korea isn't real socialism?
Yeah, my parents escaped North Korea after digging a 30-foot tunnel through frozen dirt with a pair of chopsticks. So,
Okay. Hmm. Okay. Okay, welcome once again to the Charles Friedman radio program. Hour number 2 commences at 6 minutes past 10 o'clock on this lovely Tuesday morning. I am delighted to be with you. Love it even more if you join me in person. We had our first phone call for today in the last hour. Evan called in. Why don't you give it a try? 831-265-5050. And remember, when you make that call, you get to decide what we discuss. Okay, coming up, a little blast from the past. Not as far past as I'd like to make it, but we deal with what we have to deal with. One of the things I like over the weekend is my Wall Street Journal's review section, which includes in it reviews of current books. Sometimes this is a delightful experience, other times it's rather discouraging, other times it's excruciating. This time, I noticed there is a new book out called The Second Emancipation by Howard French. And what attracted my attention here was a picture, and I see a couple of gentlemen here talking with each other. One of them is easily recognizable as President John F. Kennedy. The other, a smiling man, is Kwame Nkrumah. Now, Kwame Nkrumah is a name that if you were around and you grew up when I grew up, you heard his name a lot in the news. Kwame Nkrumah, leader of Ghana, from its independence in 1957 to his overthrow in a military coup in 1966, was in his day as important as Nelson Mandela and Mohandas Gandhi. For a shining moment in mid-century, writes Howard French, Nkrumah turned Ghana into a fountainhead of emancipation from European domination, which was followed by a wave of Pan-Africanism that seized not only Africa, but the minds of leading African Americans. Nkrumah led the way, though today he is mostly forgotten. His country wasn't large. Incidentally, for those of you who are stamp collectors, the country that is known today as Ghana was in the colonialist days known as the Gold Coast. It was a British colony, which is to say that it was more fortunate than countries that fell under the dominion of the Belgians or the French or the Germans. The British were much more enlightened and rational colonial masters. As is noted by, well, we'll get to just exactly how they set the stage for eventual independence in this particular colony. But as you might guess here, Howard French is very enamored of Kwame Nkrumah. As a socialist-tinged intellectual who flirted with the non-aligned Third World, he was held in suspicion in Washington and other Western capitals, but he vividly comprehended that African development was impeded by its fragmentation. Overcoming such debilitating divisions constituted his life's work. Mr. French is a multilingual professor of journalism at Columbia University and a former New York Times foreign correspondent. So we see where Mr. French comes from. He writes about little-known West African intellectuals and colonial officials in the wake of the 1884-85 Berlin Conference that partitioned colonial Africa, etc., etc. Well, as I was reading this, my mind flew back to an experience. I have, on this program, many times recommended a book called Modern Times by Paul Johnson as the finest historical work available, period. And Mr. Nkrumah and his antics are one of the topics that Mr. Johnson turns his attention to. He is writing about decolonization in Africa. Now, the Gold Coast, he goes into a description. Let me see here. This helps to explain why those territories where the process of transfer was longest and most elaborate. In other words, the process leading to independence that would be carefully planned, executed over time, etc., deliberate, orderly, rather than a sudden coup d'etat or revolution. Seems like a better ideal, right? Well, transfer was longest and most elaborate fared no better as a rule than those where it was rushed. The outstanding and perhaps the most pathetic example was the Gold Coast. In the post-1945 period, it was the richest black state in Africa. It was generally regarded as the most promising. It had no race problem, was the first to get independence. The road to freedom was a long one. It had a legislative council since 1850. A black member as long ago as 1888. There were 6 black members by 1916. Full elections in local government came in 1925. In 1946, the Legislative Council had an African majority. 1948, Constitutional Inquiry Commission. 1949, African Majority Committee to devise a new constitution. 1951, elections under the new constitution. 1952, Kwame Nkrumah, Prime Minister. 1954, final independence constitution. 1956, new elections. 1957, full independence. This was the slow, sure copybook process to self-rule. And Nkrumah was regarded as the model African statesman. His new country, Ghana, the prototype for African self-rule. Young, handsome, ultra-articulate, yet there were portents even before independence. Ghana's drive for independence had been the work of a barrister, J.P. Dankwa, who had hired Nkrumah as a full-time party organizer. Nkrumah was thus, from the start, a professional politician, nothing else. We've talked about this on the program. The idea of the professional politician, the person who tarries not, neither does he spin. The only thing he knows, understands, or has done is political organizing, being an activist. In healthy communities, these people are regarded as pests and busybodies. And they are discouraged. Come on, get out of here. But occasionally one rises to the top. Nkrumah was from the start a professional politician, nothing else. He hijacked up. We have a telephone call coming in. And so we will grab it. As always, the most important thing that happens on the program are your telephone calls. Okay. Hi there. Welcome to the program. Who we got here?
This is Mark. How you doing?
Hi, Mark. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I just want to let you know the Bear Mash Blues just keeps going over and over again.
Oh, really?
On my end.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe. Oh, dearie me.
Yeah.
I see what I did wrong. At least I think I did it wrong.
Figured it out?
Yeah, I think I figured it out. Oh, for God's sake. Thank
That's
you
no
for the
problem.
telephone call. Gosh.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one thing if I could.
Oh, please, go ahead. Now that you've done me a favor, let me do you one.
Yeah, you crack me up when you say I'd like to get a refund on this century.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times I feel that way myself. But I tell you what, you could go to each past century, and I'm sure the slaves and people have had hard times would have loved to have a refund on their century as well. So I think it transcends every time itself on that. I get it. Sometimes the century kind of sucks too in certain ways, but I don't think I'd want to go back.
Well, obviously, what you see depends upon where you stand, and I think that's the point you just made.
Yeah. It's all about your priorities.
There has never been a time at which everybody would say this is great. That would be utopia. And
yeah,
on this program, we have always made the point utopia is a will-o'-the-wisp. It's nonsense. It's foolishness. It is unattainable. So obviously, once again, the point you make, yeah, there's in any age, there are plenty of people around who would say, this ain't too hot.
Yeah.
The quality
exactly.
the quality of an age, I think, can be judged by, okay, what is the percentage of people who would say that? Granted, there is no utopia, but there is a difference between, say, a Soviet Union where 5% of the people are party members and therefore get to shop in the special stores and have all the things they want, and the other 95% have their daily ration of mud. Compare that with, say the United States of America during those years, in which, yes, certainly there were poor people, but the vast majority of Americans were not poor. Most were either middle class or upper class and enjoyed a far better life than your average Soviet citizen. So we can objectively say that American society and organization was superior to Soviet. I don't have any trouble saying that. I think you'd agree.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it was in the 20th century, well, actually the 19th, that capitalism had been developed so wealth could be created rather than stolen. That was the old way to get wealth, incidentally. You find somebody else who had it, hit him over the head, and take it. If you were a king or a duke or something like that, how did you get wealth? Well, the wealth was land. And if you wanted more land, how did you get it? Well, you got together a bunch of other people, gave them swords and spears and told them, hey, you see that field out there? Go out and take it. I want it. I mean, so it was essentially a zero-sum game. Somebody lost, somebody gained. Capitalism,
Right.
the development of capitalism in the 17th and 18th centuries brought along a whole new possibility, the idea that wealth could be created, the idea that there could be simply more available, and that the way to accumulate wealth was to produce wealth, simply make it. And
instead of stealing it.
This enabled an incredible, if you look at a graph of the standards of living of the world, you see this all of a sudden. It's kind of like the population graph. All of a sudden you see this steep upward climb due to the development of capitalism enabling the creation of wealth. In the 19th century, this came to its fruition. In the early 20th century, almost apotheosis. And then, unfortunately, a worldwide degringolade known as the Great Depression, which caused people to not only question, but actually, in many cases, actively turn away from capitalism. They saw this as a failure of capitalism. It is my belief, and I can substantiate well, that capitalism did not cause the Great Depression, rather government did. By that time, we had the Federal Reserve Board. We had all these other devices, political devices, governmental devices that we had come up with in order to improve capitalism. Oh, we've got to make sure that we don't have economic downturns again. This idea of a business cycle, that's bad. Let's try to eliminate that. In other words, let's try to perfect capitalism. Well, unfortunately, the more you try to perfect capitalism, the more you louse it up.
Yeah. Well, I know people that grew up in the 30s, or lived in the 30s and stuff, and they were when FDR was in office, they were loving the idea of all these work programs and stuff because the economy was so bad. I think people back in those days were flirting with the idea of socialism.
Sure, they were, because things were terrible. Things were terrible. Unfortunately, and how do I put this? At that point, both political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, were equally in the dark as to what to do. Remember when the Depression first hit, when the stock market crashed and the economy began declining, the Republicans were in power. Herbert Hoover was president, definitely a bright man, definitely a fundamentally very decent man. Republicans had Congress. They had no foggy notion what to do. No one had yet done the work of, say, Milton Friedman in codifying, what causes inflation, what causes deflation, and, what you do about it. Today, we'd say, okay, well, the first thing you do is flood the economy with liquidity. Cut interest rates. In the early 30s, the government was raising interest rates. Crazy. Mm-hmm. They were actually making things worse. And then, of course, the problem was that in spite of the fact that it was government that turned a simple stock market crash into an economic collapse, people listened to orators telling them, this is the fault of the capitalists. They did this to us. when in reality,
Right.
it was government and its mismanagement of
Yeah.
the tools of the economy. You know, we have a caller who all the time calls in and tells us how corporate power is so terrible. Well, corporate power didn't cause the Great Depression. State power did. Corporate power couldn't have done it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't want my health care run by the government.
Yeah,
Look
really.
how well the DMV does, you know.
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
You know, and private run healthcare kind of pisses me off sometimes, but I'll take it over government. At least like there's some competition. With the government, it's only one way or the highway, and that's it. You're stuck. So, yeah. Well, anyway, it's good talking with you. I gotta get back to work. So.
Well, thanks so much for your call. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Yeah. Yeah, you too. Thank you. Bye.
Well, I got a clock running, and I forgot to, again, my fault. So I lost the first few minutes of the program, which means I guess what I ought to do is restart. I had been, whoops, let's get that call-in screen back. What is it, 10:23? Okay, I'm going to do my ads, and then I'll start in again where I was.
It's hot up here. Hi, folks. Warren Knox here of Knox Roofing. Yes, it really does get hot up here, but it's okay because Knox team has been sweating it out on rooftops for 30 summers to make certain your roof will keep you warm and dry through the winter. If you have any doubt about your roof will weather the winter, call Knox Roofing today and ask about a free rooftop inspection. We love it up here. 461-0634. Thanks, folks.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, meeting and conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, week, or month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
Get ready to help build one of America's first local news and talk streaming radio stations. SantaCruzVoice.com. How do you do it? By donating either your time, money, or both. You'll be helping the Voice team construct a powerful infrastructure, one that we can all be proud of. To donate your time, your money, or both, go to SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support. SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support.
It's high time to celebrate the opening of the new Hook Outlet Dispensary, 1129 Mission in Santa Cruz. Get in on the opening fun and really low prices on the Hook's unmatched selection of top-quality medical and recreational cannabis flower, vapes, drinks, gummies, and concentrates. The Hook Outlet is now the West Side's source for finest cannabis at the lowest prices. Get in on all the opening fun and low prices at the all-new Hook Outlet. HookOutlet.com for details and deals.
Okay, welcome once again. I'm Charles Friedman. The time is 25 minutes past 10 o'clock. And one of the things I enjoy most about my weekend, I get my Wall Street Journal with its review section, which includes book reviews. And occasionally, one of these turns out to be something rather interesting. This time, the book is called The Second Emancipation. The author's name is Howard French. And a prominent figure in this is Kwame Nkrumah. Do any of you remember, if you're of my generation, you might conceivably remember the name of Kwame Nkrumah. He was a big man, late 50s, early 60s. There's a picture of him here shown in conversation with then President John F. Kennedy. And evidently this particular book is laudatory. Mr. French, the author, is a multilingual professor of journalism at Columbia University and a former New York Times foreign correspondent. And Nkrumah turned Ghana, that was his country, Ghana, into a fountainhead of emancipation from European domination, followed by a wave of Pan-Africanism that seized not only Africa, but the minds of leading African Americans. And Nkrumah led the way. Even though he's mostly forgotten, his country wasn't large, and Nkrumah wasn't vastly corrupt and grandiose like Mobutu of Zaire or Humphrey Bouigny of the Ivory Coast. As a socialist-tinged intellectual who flirted with the non-aligned Third World, he was held in suspicion in Washington and other Western capitals. Well, it's interesting. He's compared here to Nelson Mandela and Mohandas Gandhi. Wow. As I was reading this review, I got to thinking about the greatest history book ever written. You're saying, well, what's that? Well, if you're a longtime listener to this program, you're saying, yes, Modern Times by Paul Johnson. And indeed, one of the subjects that is treated in Modern Times is Mr. Nkrumah and his administration in Ghana. Ghana was a former British colony. It had been called the Gold Coast. It was as you might guess by that name, this was a very promising place. It was the first to get independence in that part of Africa when the wave of former colonial states becoming independent. Gold Coast, which became Ghana, was the first. And it was a process that had been in play for many, many years. They had a legislative council since 1850, with black members as long ago as 1888. 6 black members by 1916. Full elections in local government came in 1925. In 1946, the Legislative Council got an African majority. 1949, African Majority Committee devised a new constitution. 1951 elections under the new constitution. 1952, Kwame Nkrumah, Prime Minister. 1954, final independence constitution. 1956, new elections. 1957, full independence. This was the slow, sure copybook progress of self-rule. Nkrumah, who was regarded as the model African statesman, and his new country, Ghana, the prototype of African self-rule. Young, handsome, ultra-articulate, Nkrumah cut a notable figure. But there were portents, even before independence. Ghana's drive for independence had been the work of a barrister, J.P. Danquah, who had turned Nkrumah into a full-time party organizer. So once again we come across this person, and we've seen others, people like Lenin and so forth, Adolf Hitler, who had only been political animals, activists, organizer, whatever you want to say. I occasionally see a person listed on a ballot, community organizer, when I run like hell from these people. In a time not long ago, a better time, we used to call them something else. We called them meddlers, busybodies, pains in the neck. And that is the mentality that goes into this being a politician for a career. The primary ingredient you have to have is a willingness to believe that other people should behave as you would have them behave. And from there, it's only a short step to maybe we'll just find a way to make them behave. Nkrumah hijacked the party organization, turned it into a mass movement revolving around his own personality, persuaded the British that he was the best or simplest man to back in the independence stakes. That made it easy for him. The local government ordinances of 1951 and 53, by creating political councils, immediately fell into the hands of Nkrumah's Convention People's Party, broke the power of the native chiefs, the traditional authorities. Thus, Ghana was an embryo one-party state even before independence. Once in power, Nkrumah used British devices such as judicial inquiries, and employed left-wing British legal and political advisors to destroy all other centers of influence and the constitutional restraints on his personal rule, and to drive the opposition into illegality. Having concentrated power in his party and himself, he then destroyed the rule of law. The decisive point came December 1963. On the 9th, 3 opposition leaders, former colleagues of Mr. Nkrumah, were acquitted of treason by 3 judges in a special court. A careful 5-hour judgment, a model of English judicial reasoning, was read by the Chief Justice Sir Arku Khorsah. He had been a Middle Temple barrister for 44 years, a judge since 1945, Chief Justice since 1956. He was a symbol of the most vital governing principle of all, that in a civilized community, everyone and every institution, including, indeed above all, the state, is equal before and subject to the law. He was, in a real sense, the end result of a millennium of British constitutional development. 2 days later, Nkrumah sacked him. The 3 men were tried again. This time they were convicted. 2 years later, old Danquah died in jail, where he was being held without trial. This destruction of the rule of law was paralleled by the moral destruction of Nkrumah and by the economic destruction of the country. The 3 were closely connected. In the heady atmosphere of Bandung in 1955, Nkrumah absorbed 2 fallacies. The first was that all economic programs can be solved by political means. Colonies and ex-colonies were poor and backward, not for intrinsic physical and human reasons, but because of the political fact of colonization. The theory was emerging, and Bandung gave it enormous impetus. Colonialism didn't just hold back economic advance, but actually subjected the colony to a deliberate process of underdevelopment. What politics had done, politics could undo. Underdevelopment could be reversed by large-scale, politically motivated investment programs. Continental prosperity could be promoted by the political process. Nkrumah preached this doctrine at the Pan-African Congresses he inaugurated Accra in 1958. He summed it up in Addis Ababa in 1963. African unity is above all a political kingdom, which can only be gained by political means. The social and economic development of Africa will come only within the political kingdom, not the other way around. He called for a union government of African states, a common market, a pan-African currency, an African military zone, a central bank, a continued communication system, and a common foreign policy. We shall thus begin the triumphant march on the kingdom of African personality. Nkrumah not only preached these fantasies, he actually tried to practice them in Ghana. The territory had been one of colonialism's success stories. By diligent housekeeping, its modest level of prosperity might have been consolidated and even raised. By politicizing the economy, Nkrumah rapidly eliminated Ghana's balance of payments surplus. By the mid-1960s, it had accumulated a mountain of foreign debt and a low international credit rating. The second fallacy, or disease, which Nkrumah and others contracted at Bandung, which operated as a mutual admiration society, was the notion that the emergence of new nations from the malign process of underdevelopment required leadership by charismatic personalities. The idea was implicit in Leninism, which endowed vanguard elites and their guiding spirit with quasi-sacral insights into the historical process. It was also implicit in Gandhiism, which gave a determining political role to the self-elect holy man, and was a primary influence on the Bandung generation. Nehru, Sukarno, U Nu, then Nasser, and Nkrumah, and many others, were not just political leaders, they were spiritual leaders too, in the sense that the nation incarnated the spiritual yearnings of the people, and liberators incarnated the nation. It was not long after he returned from Bandung that Nkrumah began to allow his followers to refer to him as Osagyefo, the Redeemer. The corruption set in rapidly. A form of bastardized Stalinism made its appearance. In 1960, an authorized biography recorded, "He is our father, teacher, brother, friend, indeed our life, for without him we would no doubt have existed, but we would not have lived. What we owe him is greater than the air we breathe, for he made us as surely as he made Ghana." The Redeemer began to believe this nonsense himself. All Africans know, he said in 1961, that I represent Africa and I speak in her name. Therefore, no African can have an opinion that differs from mine. It was against this background that Nkrumah crushed opposition and wrecked the rule of law. The charisma held for a time, especially at international conferences, but even there, as the 60s progressed, newer, more up-to-date and fashionable figures arose and became the cynosure, the new thing, replacing and supplanting the old thing. Nkrumah lost his luster. At home, the fact of arrogating himself quasi-divine powers made him vulnerable when the gradual, then rapid, fall in living standards proved that the magic didn't work. By the mid-1960s, there was no constitutional means of removing the Redeemer. He fell to a military coup in February 1966 and died in exile in 1972. Thus, the true story of Kwame Nkrumah. So save yourself $39.95. Do not buy Howard Stern's book, The Second Emancipation. Rather, instead, spend, well, I don't know, whatever you have to spend. This particular copy was priced at $21. And buy Paul Johnson's Modern Times. It might cost more by now. This particular edition is a few years old. But if you're ever going to read a history book, read Paul Johnson's Modern Times, and make sure you get the second edition, because the first one was done in 1983, but he did a second one 10 years later, and there's new chapters covering that extra 10 years, so well worth the extra money. I might add, when Celeste and I first met, and she asked me one day, well, what do you want for your birthday or Christmas? I asked her for the new edition of Modern Times. And that's the book that I've just been sharing with you. Coming up, our second call today from Evan. Let's find out what is on his mind now. Good morning, sir. Where to?
Hey, Charles. Yeah, you had another caller, and you were talking about another caller that didn't seem to like corporate power, and I probably kind of felt like you were kind of talking to me, but I'd like to give you some arguments on corporate power and how they influenced the 1920 stock market crash. And I've got like 3 or 4 points here. Honestly, I kind of agree with this. Monopolies and economic inequality. Large corporations dominated industries like steel, oil, and railroads, stiffening competition and concentrating wealth. By 1929, the top 1% of Americans held nearly 20% of the nation's income, while workers' wages stagnated. Driven by corporate reduced consumer purchasing power, leading to overproduction and economic stagnation. What's your thoughts on that, sir?
These corporations do not operate in a vacuum. They operate in the American economy. Government was doing a couple of things during the 20s that operated against the interests of the working class. Number one, the 1920s was a time of very high tariffs. We no longer had infant industries that needed to be protected by tariffs against foreign competition. Rather, instead, the United States at that time had, as you've just informed us, the finest, most productive, and best industrial plant in the world. Therefore, a low tariff would have served to reduce prices. When foreign imports are made more expensive, companies like U.S. Steel, etc., what are they going to do? They're going to say, okay, well, I can charge this much. It's above the price that a free market would have provided. So government, by instituting high tariffs in the 1920s, served to keep prices artificially high, thus depriving people in the lower economic regions of needed purchasing power. That's one. Number two, I mentioned earlier that the effects of money supply and interest rates on economics which have been very thoroughly studied over the past decades, were not nearly as clear then as they are now. In the months after the stock market crash, the government could have operated in such a way as to ameliorate the effects of that crash. Instead, out of probably primarily ignorance, but certainly with counterintuitive effect, they tightened money instead of loosening it. I would commend your attention. I don't know if you recall the great stock market crash of 1987. Most people don't. But I assure you...
I was 3 years old, sir.
I assure you, if you research this, you'll have a little fun. There's been a lot of research about the market crash of 1929, and you can see, here is the percentage of decline, and there's this huge number. In 1987, the stock market suffered a crash every bit as severe as that of 1929. And that is not an exaggeration. And yet today we don't even think about it. Well, the reason why was because by then we had an administration in power, that was President Reagan, and a Federal Reserve Board that understood, okay, we've just had a tremendous shock to the economy, the stock market crashed, let's make sure there's plenty of liquidity so that this doesn't go any further. And the mere fact that we did not have any vast recession following that equally dramatic stock market crash proves that government was the primary determinant of whether an event, we had the same event twice, a stock market crash, one resulted in a 10-year economic collapse, the other barely a hiccup that people don't remember. Corporations could not do that. Now, the things that you point out about corporations and how they make decisions that you and I don't like, all of that is true. I'm not denying it. But I am telling you that the big power, the major power, the power to shape huge events is not in corporate boardrooms. It is in the halls of government.
And I 100% agree with you. I don't trust government too well. When I look into government regulation, they're very weak under that. Just like we were talking about that lady that got fired from Trump, because of her mortgage fraud. I think there's a lot of federal oversight that's very weak. Now,
really?
Can I have a little bit of an argument here, sir? 1987 didn't spiral. The Federal Reserve acted quickly, injecting inequality and researching markets. There was no underlying economic weakness, unlike 1929, where wage suppression and overproduction and speculative bubbles had hollowed out the economy. The crash was largely driven by computerized trading and panic, not structural rot. That's what I'm getting from the AI, sir.
Well, I disagree with that. I think, we've talked about this in the past. AI looks to places like Wikipedia, which are left in their orientation, looks to a Howard Zinn type interpretation. The prosperity of the 1920s was quite broad-based and very real. I mentioned the fact that high tariffs kept it from being better than it could have been. That's true. But the idea that somehow the prosperity of the 1920s was hollow and unreal, no, that simply doesn't match the facts. In both cases, you had a stock market crash of roughly equivalent magnitude. One resulted in a depression, the other did not. And the big difference was in what the Fed did and what the government did as a result of those events and how they treated them. One other thing Hoover did as a reaction to the Depression was to ask for a significant raise in taxes. Now, you might say to yourself, wait a second. If you've got the economy going into a tailspin, you raise taxes? Yeah, his idea was, I want to make sure the federal budget was balanced, so we have to bring in more tax revenue. he could have hardly come up with ideas that would make the conditions worse. And yet, once again, taxation is a government matter. So the point I'm making to you, in which earlier, to your credit, you said you agreed with me, the real decisions, the ones that make the huge differences in the life and health of our economy, these are governmental decisions. And if we get them wrong, the consequences are just terrible.
For sure, sir. Well, I appreciate it. Granted, the AI network did give me a CNBC info. Granted, I understand your disagreement there, sir, but I appreciate it. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on.
Okay. While I have you, a few minutes ago I was talking about Kwame Nkrumah, and I read a page or two out of Modern Times to emphasize that. In this same book, Modern Times, in a different part of the book, there are pages that deal with the prosperity of the 1920s. How real was it? How real was it not? What did government policies do to promote it and to inhibit it? Once again, if you ever read a book in your life, read Modern Times by Paul Johnson. I'm sure you could get a copy online very affordably.
Paul Johnson, Modern Times. Appreciate it, sir. Thanks again for letting me get onto your radio station one more time.
Always glad.
Hopefully, you'll get some other callers.
Always glad to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you again.
Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks again, Charles. You too. Bye-bye.
You too can call the program and make the points you'd like to make, ask the questions you'd like to ask. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. Please do not hesitate. Okay, where to from here? Goodness gracious. Seem to have... Oh, hey, here's something that, political news, but interesting. Gerald Nadler, a congressman from New York City, longtime incumbent, 17 terms, so he's been in the House of Representatives 34 years. And he has announced that in this upcoming election next year, he will not be running for another term. Now, Mr. Nadler has always been, and goes back 30 years, so this is a long time. When he was first elected, Mr. Nadler was one of the most left-leaning members of Congress. Nowadays, I guess he seems more moderate by comparison with some of the screaming memes who've been elected since. But it should be noted that among New York City Democratic politicians, prominent Democratic politicians, Mr. Nadler, Congressman Nadler, is one of those who has endorsed Zohran Mamdani for mayor of New York. Now, granted, he is a Democrat. Mamdani has the Democratic nomination for that office, so for a Democrat to endorse him should be, is that news? Really? Come on. The only reason it is because so many prominent New York Democrats have chosen to withhold their endorsement from Mamdani. They haven't endorsed anybody else. They haven't bolted and endorsed somebody else. But, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who is from New York, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, also from New York. Democratic leadership, both members are from New York City. If Mamdani is elected, they will be his constituents. And they are very prominent Democrats. Neither of them have chosen to endorse Mamdani. Gerald Nadler has. So it will be interesting to see who winds up taking his seat in the House of Representatives. It'll be difficult to see how it's going to be somebody who is further to the left because, well, I don't know. With the likes of Mamdani, etc., running around, I guess you can get further left than that. Incidentally, we had a phone call from Evan a few minutes ago. He often talks about landlord-tenant issues. I found something here that I think might be of interest to him and to you concerning Mr. Mamdani's calls for a rent freeze in New York City. Howard Husock reports from Bronx, New York. It began as a New Year's Day campaign stunt. A New York mayoral candidate wearing a suit and tie jumped into the icy water off Coney Island. His goal was to call attention to his proposal to freeze the city's rents. But now that Zohran Mamdani is the Democratic nominee and a national political celebrity, his plan has Sharon Cohen terrified. It would make me lose my building. It would destroy me, says Miss Cohen. She's 64 years old. She owns a 99-year-old, 35-unit, 5-floor walk-up brick apartment building in the High Bridge section of the western part of the Bronx. 99, so the building was built in 1926. Cool. I hope it's been nicely maintained, but not renovated. The building is on a block with a storefront Pentecostal church at one end, 2 bodegas on the other. It's Ms. Cohen's sole financial asset. So this building is all she has. She is an African-American widow. Her late husband's father was Jewish, who before retirement supervised a sheltered workshop for the developmentally disabled. The city puts the building's market value at $1.1 million, burdened with a $417,000 mortgage used to buy out a sibling's share of the property. Ms. Cohen is afraid of losing it to the bank. A freeze, she said, would mean that still you have to make repairs, but you can't raise the rent. Repairs, done by her elder brother Gerald, the building supervisor, are constant. Tenants need new refrigerators. Damaged emergency exit doors must be replaced. The building's residents all have my cell phone number, and they call, she says. Even without a freeze on her rents, which average $1,300 for a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, the city is already making it so difficult for Ms. Cohen to keep her building that she is effectively underwater. She essentially gets no income. She's just trying to hold on to the building, says Valencia Gojak of One Source Property Management, which has helped Ms. Cohen and other Bronx property owners in similar situations. Unlike New York's rent stabilization regime, under New York's rent stabilization regime, a board appointed by the mayor sets rent levels and must approve any increase for 960,000 rent-stabilized apartments, nearly a third of all the city's housing units. In 2017 and 2018, under Mayor Bill de Blasio, the board granted no increase for one-year leases, in other words, a rent freeze. This year, under Eric Adams, the board granted a 3% increase for a one-year lease, 4.5% for 2 years. That came after New York University's Mark Willis testified that owners of rent-stabilized property in the Bronx are on the average losing $120 a month on every apartment. Any rent increases have just been reducing the losses. Banks are terrified. They will have to take over distressed properties. In other words, the banks don't want to foreclose. Mr. Mamdani would have limited power to implement many of his tax proposals, but he could stack the Rent Guidelines Board with appointees willing to implement his freeze. Even as Ms. Cohen's rents have been stabilized, and in some cases frozen, her property taxes have not. Over the past 10 years, her tax bill has risen from $35,202 to $59,106. During just 10 years, that is dramatic. That's almost a doubling. During the rent freeze of 2017 and 2018 alone, her tax bill rose $8,000. Ms. Cohen could conceivably scrape by if her tenants all paid in full and on time on the first of the month. But few do. In the first half of July, she received $14,000 out of an expected $46,000. She sees this as a holdover from the pandemic when an eviction ban took effect and most tenants stopped paying. Post-COVID, city tenant protection laws limit any concern eviction. In the past 18 months, 5 tenants owing total back rent of $130,000 simply left. She'll never get that money. Non-payment is the rule, not the exception. Current tenants owe uncollected rent of $158,000. It is almost, this is the equivalent of shoplifting, really. You're taking somebody's merchandise and refusing to pay. Ms. Gojak says it takes 2 years to evict a tenant of a rent-stabilized apartment in the Bronx for non-payment of rent. 2 years. For an eviction to be approved, landlords must first correct any housing violations. Even if they aren't getting the rental income, they need to pay for those repairs. What's more, non-paying tenants can apply to the city for one-shot deals, an emergency rent assistance payment, to cover large amounts owed. Payments may not cover the full amount, says Ann Korchak of the Small Property Owners Association in New York, and they come with a 1-year no eviction clause. Even without such bailouts, almost all Ms. Cohen's tenants receive government assistance of some kind, either a federal housing voucher or city-provided public assistance. She values her handful of working tenants who pay on time. Mr. Mamdani isn't wrong that rents are high in much of New York. By one estimate, the median city rent is $4,700, but regulation, not greed, is to blame. A great deal of the city's housing stock is price-controlled, including the rent-stabilized stock and an additional 177,000 public housing units. Still more is income-restricted, including 50 city and federally subsidized developments with, quote, affordable units, unquote, set aside for those with 60, 80, or even 120% of median income. All this creates incentives for tenants to stay put in their apartments, even if they no longer need as large a place as they once did. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, 30% of New York City Housing Authority tenants are overhoused, meaning they have empty bedrooms. Low turnover in regulated units drives up prices on market rate units. New York's renter turnover rate since 2021 is 19% lower than the national average. That's one reason rents for available units keep rising, even as the city has been losing population. Caught in a crossfire. Cohen. I see young friends first. I ask them, what will you do to help? And keep walking. This is the way things are when landlord becomes a persecuted class. After all, they're villains. Well, that's the way Mamdani and the left see them. I'll be back in 6 minutes. Oh, boy.
Son in the shower, at the same time that my husband used this trick to get hard.
Are you worried about what these are doing to your kids? I am. Some people say cell phones are killing our kids, robbing them of their childhood.
Mental health is declining. Attention spans are declining.
Jonathan Haidt's book about how smartphones harm kids has been a bestseller for more than a year. People like Michelle Obama call him an expert.
We've got an expert that actually knows something.
But wait, we adults always worry about new things. When I was a kid, cops raided pinball arcades saying these cause delinquency. They also attacked
comic books, the monumental problem confronting your children today.
Responsible for a substantial amount of juvenile delinquency and child crime.
I think there ought to be a law against them.
Is the current worry about smartphones just another overblown panic? Before Haidt published his book, he invited other researchers to review it.
I actually was, at his request, a reviewer for his book.
Psychologist Chris Ferguson.
My advice to him was to not publish it, essentially, because it was full of errors and problems.
What kind of problems?
If you look at kids today, they're less violent, they smoke less, they use drugs less. All that happened during the social media smartphone age.
So why the worry about smartphones?
We're probably in the midst of another moral panic.
Why do you call it a moral panic?
They're the evil social media companies. They're the bad guys. I'm a good parent. I'm not letting my kid have a smartphone until they're 37.
Jonathan Haidt does say governments should prohibit kids from using social media, not until they're 37, but until they're 16.
This is the one area where we need actually legislative help.
To buy fake IDs.
But right now, there is nothing. And as with alcohol laws, yeah, kids can still get an older brother to buy them beer. But does that mean we should get rid of minimum age laws and let every kid buy alcohol at every age?
Probably not, says Ferguson. But he reminds people that American experts once wanted similar limits on rock music.
Ozzy Osbourne got sued over, the idea that he had caused some kids to commit suicide.
The lyrics in these songs influenced my son to commit suicide.
This music needed to be, regulated, tamed by the government.
We are raising our children on a massive diet of violence.
Al Gore's wife complained about
selling explicit sex and violence to younger and younger kids.
Congress proposed new laws. Dee Snider of Twisted Sister pushed back.
There is no authority who has the right, not myself, not the federal government, not some recording industry committee.
The irony is that as people began to try to censor rock music, suicides among youth at that time actually went up.
The next scare was video games.
Defending asteroids to critics, they are a menace.
Parents who buy some of those games may not realize just how much violence they're getting.
As usual, politicians rushed in.
One place parents want us to draw the line is with violence in video games.
It had virtually no impact how aggressive they were, whether they engaged in bullying. It didn't make them
violence
shooters.
At the time was actually going down.
Absolutely, it was going down. It turns out that mass homicide perpetrators actually play fewer violent video games.
So maybe they were wrong about comic books, rock music, video games, but this time, I suspect that Jonathan Haidt is right about smartphone addiction. I get hooked. It's just so interesting.
We adults are hooked too, but at least we made it through puberty.
Kids suffer more, he says, in many ways.
Sleep goes down. Time with friends goes down. Exercise goes down.
If there was an issue around smartphones and social media, we would expect to see a fairly, consistent international trend in things like teen suicide or diagnoses of depression and anxiety disorders. We actually don't see that.
In fact, this Lancet article points out that in Europe, as cell phone use increased, suicide rates dropped. Ferguson says if American kids are depressed, it might be because of what they're being taught.
Racism is everywhere. You can't get ahead if you're black or Latino. If you're white, then you're an oppressor. That sexism is everywhere. Why would you be happy?
More important, he says, is that most kids today are doing fine.
They're less violent, they smoke less, they use drugs less, they drink less, they stay in school more, they volunteer in their communities more. And we look for the bad news and only attribute the bad news to something like social media or smartphones, and we don't attribute any of the good news.
At least 11 states have moved to ban or restrict cell phone use in public school classrooms.
So far, Haidt's argument is winning. Some politicians want to ban social media for kids, and more schools are banning phones.
The bans may actually make things worse.
What's the cost of banning it in schools?
Unintended negative consequences. Are we suspending kids for their cell phone use? A lot of schools are. And that can cause real harm to the kids. People get convinced that they fixed a problem when they didn't. And that's going to waste a lot of time rather than looking at what might actually work.
In the court of public opinion, he's winning. You're losing.
Yeah. Oh, give it 15 years. Of course, we'll be panicking about something else.
It's 11:06. Welcome back. I'm Charles Friedman. This is my radio program on SantaCruzVoice.com. Be a listener, be a caller. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. I am always happy to hear from you. And remember, When you call in, you get to decide what we talk about. Actually, see, we have our first caller for this hour. That is very, very gratifying. So let's just shut down the theme music and talk to Mark. There we go. Hi there, buddy. What do you hear? What do you say?
Well, you know, Charlie, I was listening to your on-the-hour news break there, and the announcer was stating about the financial difficulties of the Watsonville Community Hospital and their economic problems. And he stated this was the result of the big, beautiful bill and the cuts to Medicaid, which here in California is Medi-Cal. So he was pushing the blame on the Donald Trump and the budget cuts that have come about.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wait a second. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Watsonville Hospital financial difficulties predate this bill by years. Am I wrong?
They went through a near bankruptcy. They've had a takeover. They've had quite a bit of problems. And again, it kind of relates to their business plan and the clientele. But what's interesting, they're blaming Donald Trump and the big, beautiful bill. And I would blame Governor Newsom and his not-so-beautiful bill, where he stated that if you are in the state of California, if you are legal or illegal, you are eligible to receive Medi-Cal, which is the California version of Medicaid. So Watsonville Hospital had 80% of the births at the hospital were covered by Medi-Cal. The majority of their hospitalization people coming in, Medi-Cal. So it was not a sustainable business model, and Governor Newsom made it worse. So now they are blaming Donald Trump and the cuts he's doing to the Medicaid program, stating that you have to be a legal resident of the United States to receive the benefits. But pushing on that Donald all this to happen. And like you stated, this has been going an ongoing problem for many years. And, you know, it's coming to haunt them. And now with the cut in the federal Medicaid program, they're in a world of hurt. But it's not Donald Trump's fault.
No, this is just a catalyst that brings everything else to the surface. The local hospital has been in financial straits for a long, long time. And the reason why, obviously, they are forced to provide services to a lot of people who can't pay. I guess that is in keeping with the Zohran Mamdani left-wing idea that medical services and health care are free. Well, medical services and health care aren't free. You've got a hospital building there that, costs money to build. It has to be maintained. You've got equipment in that building that you have to maintain and that is costly. You've got doctors, nurses, cleaning staff, everybody else who works there has a salary that has to be paid. And you're saying that people ought to be able to go in and access all of this and not pay anything. Well, who's picking up that tab?
Yeah, correct. One component you left out is this is the state of California, and the malpractice insurance rates for, hospitals and such are through the roof. And it's not necessarily the fault of the medical provider. It's just all the lawyers, the open lawsuit actions that they can take. So it's brutal to be a doctor in California at the time. And it's kind of why Santa Cruz County has not had a trauma center. No one wants to do it. You get hit by a car, they're going to put you in a helicopter and fly you over to Stanford.
Right.
But no, the public entity there, it's they're, again, to blame Donald Trump is ridiculous. Another one to watch is our local school district. PUSD has not done their financial audit. It was due in July. They have until September 12th, and there's a possibility for a state takeover of the Pajaro Valley Unified School District. There's only 5 school districts in the entire state that have not completed their audit yet, and PUSD has not.
Boy, oh boy, that would be a feather in their cap, wouldn't it?
Well, it might be a plus, actually. Whoever the state took it over, they could not do worse than the PUSD.
It's difficult to see how that would work. You're right. That could be a blessing in disguise.
That could be, and they could defund their ethnic studies program, defund their, their DEI programs, their all of it. It's a nightmare over there at this time, and so possibly a state takeover may be good. I'm surprised I would say that.
Politics makes bedfellows strange.
Anyhow, but yeah, to blame Donald Trump for Watsonville Community Hospital is it's ongoing. It's going to get worse, and Governor Newsom is the guy to blame. So you can put the blame a little closer to home.
Yeah, and also the time frame fits a little bit better. Again, the idea that this chronic problem can be blamed on something that just happened a few months ago is it's utterly illogical. Makes no sense.
Correct. But Governor Newsom doing that, well, if you're here and you get across the border, you're going to get covered by our public-funded medical program. No, that's not sustainable. And it was ridiculous when he did it, and we're fruit of his labors here.
Well, let's just hope that Republicans come up with a candidate for governor next year. It looks as if last I saw, Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco were the only 2 candidates to be putting together any significant support, and both of them were hovering around 10%. So, I don't know. The leader in this was, what's her name, that Katie Porter, the former Democratic Congresswoman, and she's at 20%. So it's still a wide open race.
Correct.
But I haven't seen anybody yet actually becoming visible. I mean, the last couple of governor's races came and went. I don't even remember who the candidate were. Now, I remember who won, obviously, because they get to serve as governor. But I don't remember the other guy.
I remember Steve Garvey because he was a baseball player.
He didn't run for. Wait a second. He didn't run for governor.
Oh, he was.
He ran.
Senator,
Yeah, you see that you've just emphasized my point that these people, they run, and maybe he has some celebrity as a ball player, but as a political candidate, he's invisible.
Well, can you name who your assemblyman is?
No. As a matter of fact, I thought it was Rivas, but somebody told me the other day that
I think you are. I think you are Rivas. I think I'm Addis, who's out of Santa Maria. I think you're Rivas out of Hollister, and Santa Cruz is Pellerin. But no, you try to look at the assembly districts. It is ridiculous, and then it is amazing. But I'm pretty sure you're Rivas because he voted for putting the solar plant there on Green Valley Road. Those are his constituents there.
Okay.
Another interesting component of PUSD, their last board meeting, along with ethnic studies, they're still pushing 16-year-olds to be able to vote for school board members. So 16-year-olds will get the right to vote in the next election.
Nutty stuff. Well, yeah. Let's hope the state does. Let's hope the state does take it over. They, as you pointed out, they couldn't do worse.
They could not. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks for the call. Always good to hear from you. Good way to start the third hour. How about you? You want to offer a call for today's program? You still got plenty of time. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. 831-265-5050. Well, looks like we're going through a spell of... Oh, okay. We're back, and we're beautiful. At 17 minutes past, this is something that I've simply got to talk about because there are a number of different sides to it. President Trump has been testing the limits of executive power in a lot of ways. And, well, frankly, there are some things he's been doing that, while I applaud them, I think to myself, is this really something the president has the right to do on his own? Mr. Trump will write an executive order, and he'll say, well, yes, I can do this, but my question is always, how would I be talking if, for example, Joe Biden or Barack Obama were writing all these executive orders? In fact, during his administration, Biden did write a number of executive orders. It was through his executive orders, for example, that he opened the border. He provided orders as to how border enforcement was to be essentially undone. I mean, he never asked for a change in the law. In the 4 years that Mr. Biden was president, no changes were made in the immigration laws. And yet, there was certainly a monumental change in policy enacted from an open border to a closed border. Congress didn't do a thing. Now, I submit to you, that's not supposed to happen. Article 1, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Legislative authority is vested in the Congress. I mean, that's just the first thing they put in there. Top priority. And yet we have presidents now, and again, Mr. Trump cannot be criticized for this by himself. It was Barack Obama, who, after having his party defeated in an off-year election, came out and said, well, I've got a cell phone and I've got I've got a pen. I've got an ink pen and a cell phone. I can govern. I remember throwing a fit when he said that. And the question I was asking him was, why isn't everybody else throwing a fit? For a president of the United States to say, I have a pen and a cell phone, I can govern, is reprehensible. But because the first president who said it, and the first president who actually conducted himself in that fashion, was a Democrat who was eagerly enabled and supported by his sycophants in the media. What if Donald Trump, or for that matter, even mild-mannered Mitt Romney, had said, hey, if I'm elected president, I've got a cell phone and a pen, I can govern. The same people who slept through Mr. Obama's outrageous announcement would have been up in arms, jumping up and down. And this is one of the things I keep offering and calling people's attention to. The question of put the shoe on the other foot. Turn over the coin. Something is being done. Well, maybe you like it, maybe you don't like it. But look at the way it's being done. And ask yourself, if this was something I didn't like, being done by somebody I didn't like, what would my reaction be? And it is with that type of mentality that I turn to the issue of President Trump's tariff regime. President Trump's tariffs are one of the broadest claims of executive power in American history. taxing imports from anywhere on his personal whim. This is how he has been acting. The problem is he doesn't have that power under the law or under the Constitution, as the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled late Friday. VOS Selections versus U.S. This is a critical moment for the separation of powers. A 7-4 majority upheld a lower court decision striking down the tariffs that Mr. Trump imposed under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEPA, International Emergency Economic Powers Act. In February, he invoked the law to slap taxes on tariffs from Mexico, Canada, and China, supposedly to address a fentanyl emergency. He later declared the U.S. trade deficit an emergency to justify tariffs on the rest of the world. IEPA gives the president authority to regulate the importation of goods to protect national security. Mr. Trump claims this lets him impose tariffs as long as he declares a national emergency. Judges disagree. IEPA does not use the words tariffs or duties, nor any similar terms like customs, taxes, or imposts. The unsigned majority opinion says this is unlike every other law in which Congress explicitly gives the president tariff power. Those laws have used clear and precise terms to delegate tariff power, reciting the term duties or one of its synonyms. The administration and the 4 dissenting judges claim the term regulate should be interpreted broadly. But tariffs are taxes, and the majority says that the power to regulate has been understood to be distinct from the power to tax. Remember, Obamacare was only upheld by the Supreme Court because they managed to claim that it was a tax. The administration's argument would let the Securities and Exchange Commission tax substantial swaths of the American economy because Congress authorized it to regulate stock trading. More ominously for Mr. Trump, his tariffs run afoul of the Supreme Court's major questions doctrine, which says the president needs clear authority from Congress for significant economic and political actions. Remember, this operates both ways. When an executive board or executive commission like the Environmental Protection Agency decides, well, carbon dioxide is a pollutant and therefore we can issue regulations that will effectively shut down huge portions of the United States economy and impoverish the country and deprive people of the right to buy the automobile they want to buy. None of that can be done without an act of Congress. And the Supreme Court has said so. The court applied the doctrine in overturning President Biden's student loan payoff. Mr. Trump's tariffs certainly qualify as major. They hit more than $4 trillion worth of imports annually, some 14% of the nation's economy, where the government has never previously claimed powers of this magnitude. The major questions doctrine may be implemented, the majority says. Mr. Trump is the first president to use IEPA to impose tariffs, which is a telling indication the government's reading of a statute is incorrect. After all, that statute has been on the books for just shy of 50 years. This is a rather novel construction of it. President Trump's lawyers try to dodge the major questions barrier by saying this is trumped on foreign policy by the president's Article 2 powers. While judges typically defer to presidents on foreign matters, as the majority says, the power of the purse, including the power to tax, belongs to Congress. Same for trade, as the Constitution makes clear. If Mr. Trump gets away with his IEPA tariffs, what's to stop the next president? Here's the big question. What's to stop the next president from using the law to put tariffs on countries with high CO2 emissions? It isn't hard to imagine a Democrat in the White House declaring a global climate emergency and arguing that because this counts as foreign policy, judges should permit it. Mr. Trump denounced the decision, blamed partisan judges, but judges nominated by presidents of both parties were on opposite sides of this ruling. The court also left the tariffs in place for now, told the lower court to reconsider its universal injunction under the terms the Supreme Court recently laid out in Trump versus Casa. But on a policy as consequential as these tariffs, the rulings can't apply to the plaintiffs of this case alone. Mr. Trump is bloody-minded on tariffs, and he'll use whatever other statutes he can. He recently expanded his use of Section 232, national security power, to impose tariffs on derivative steel and aluminum products, including bulldozers, furniture, rail cars, appliances, air conditioning parts, butter knives, and spray deodorants and strollers. Who knew that baby buggies were a threat to the homeland? Congress has ceded too much power over trade to the president. But that doesn't mean he can get away with anything. If he can impose a tax on any imported product anytime he wants, he really does have the power of a king. The lower courts are doing their duty, and it will soon be up to the Supreme Court. It is beyond me how 4 judges managed to find for Mr. Trump in this particular case. And when it goes to the Supreme Court, I am absolutely confident that this expansive interpretation of presidential authority will be clipped back. Wouldn't it be interesting if the judges who side with Mr. Trump are the left-wingers on the court who want an expanded presidential authority and federal role, and the ones who shut him down are his own appointees and other conservatives? Frankly, I would like to see that. It's 11:30. I'll be back in 2 minutes. Telephone line 31265-5050 is the telephone number.
The Santa Cruz County Fair opens Wednesday, September 10th with FMX Rampage at the Grandstand featuring Adam Jones, X-Game gold medalist, with his action team. Thursday, it's the Outlaw Mariachi. Friday, it's the White Album Ensemble. Saturday, Red returns, a Taylor Swift tribute band. And Sunday, the Chata Show, and that evening, Los Dinos. And our drone show at 9 o'clock each night. Pre-sale tickets and information at SantaCruzCountyFair.com.
The Santa Cruz County Fair.
When you need help escaping from an abusive relationship, call on the Angel.
Hello, I am attorney Angel Hess, and I am ready to help you. Whether you or a loved one needs legal protection from an abusive spouse, cohabitant, or neighbor, I will help you. I have over 7 years' experience working as a lawyer protecting others from abusive relationships.
Stop the abuse now. Call on the Angel, attorney Angel L. Hess at SantaCruzLegal.net.
Cannabis is one of nature's most beneficial plants. Hello, I'm Jenna. Treehouse Dispensary, we use information about cannabis. Listen to Carly.
Thanks, Jenna. For those who wake up in the middle of the night, Treehouse suggests a THC CBN chocolate edible blend like Sleepy Time from Scentsy. Sleep the night away.
For answers to your cannabis questions, ask your friends at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive in Soquel, or ourtreehouse.io.
What's your family eating for dinner? Chef Ben here at the Back 9 Grill and Bar, where you can pick up family dinner that feeds 4 to 6 hungry people. Family meals include ribs, a whole smoked chicken, pound of pulled pork, and plenty of sauce. Served with a full quart of baked beans, coleslaw, macaroni and cheese, dinner rolls, pickles, a side of onions, and for dessert, brownies with a pint of Mary ice cream. Call and order your family's dinner about 15 minutes before you want to eat. See you at the 9.
With Wells Fargo Premier, a team can help you plan for your dreams. So your dream car and vacation home. Go.
Well, this is it. First day of college.
We are so proud of you, Jess.
Mom, Dad, you're embarrassing me. I'm 18.
Hi, 18. I'm Dad.
Look, I love you guys, but I'll be okay. Here at State Public University of Knowledge, I'm sure to learn a lot of things that help me prepare for the future.
All right. We'll get out of your hair, but we're gonna be back in 2 weeks to visit. We just can't wait to see how much you've changed and grown. Oh, don't forget your Bible. Okay.
All right, kiddo.
Love you.
This is her dorm room, right?
I think so.
Hey, Dad. Birthing person?
Oh, hey, person I birthed? Are you good?
How could I be good when our capitalistic patriarchal systems are crushing the marginalized and oppressed, and our planet is literally on fire thanks to climate change? I am not good.
I'm not good. I'm Dad.
Honey, it's not the time.
All right.
Is that your Bible?
Oh, my professors say it's an archaic collection of fairy tales that perpetuate bigotry.
Oh, cool. Cool. Do you want to show us around campus?
Bet. This is the library.
Nice sturdy shelves. I like it.
The God delusion. Why your parents are the oppressors? Punch a conservative?
Birthing person, I knew you were gonna freak out, but don't worry. I don't read books in the library. I mostly come here when we protest injustice.
Well, injustice is bad. Not a girl. What kind of things do you protest?
Oh, you know, the fascist takeover of the country, low wages for agender barista queers, the Jews.
The Jews?
What is all that ruckus?
Wait a minute. Why the Jews?
Oh, the students are just protesting cisgender white heteronormativity. You have nothing to worry about unless you're cis white hetero. How about we go meet my professors? We can go out the back door. Hey, Professor.
Oh, hey. You must be Jess's parents. I am her economics professor.
Oh, economics. Good. Like Thomas Sowell?
Who? Oh no. This week we're learning how to destroy the colonial establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized.
Sturdy construction. I like it.
Hi, I'm Jess's English professor.
Oh, English. Like Milton and Shakespeare.
Who? Oh no. This week we are learning how to destroy the colonial establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized.
I like Tom Clancy.
Who? Hi, I'm Jess's world history professor.
Yeah, let me guess. You teach her how to destroy the colonial establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized.
No. We teach world history.
See, nothing to worry about.
And how to destroy the colonial establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized.
The globe is cool, though.
It spins. Oh, also, God is dead, and I hate him. Yeah.
Okay, parents, that was the end of the tour. I gotta get to my 2 p.m. protests and then my 6 p.m. house party. Another protest for injustice.
Jess, you've literally deconstructed everything you've ever believed in. I mean, this place isn't educating you, it's brainwashing you.
It isn't brainwashing me, it's teaching me how to destroy the colonial establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized. And in doing so, I learned how to destroy the
establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized. Well, personally, I feel like
destroy the colonial establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized.
Honey, we gotta get her out of here! Honey!
Jess, there's an oppressed, marginalized minority person here in the car that needs help. Come quick!
Don't worry, minority person, I can help. I'm white.
Where's
is they? I don't see they anywhere. Wait a minute. You can't do this to me. I need to destroy the colonial establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized. I need to destroy the colonial establishment that perpetuates the oppression of the marginalized. Welcome.
Another Babylon Bee satire. And the reason they're funny is because they are so true. Okay, that's about it for today. The time is almost noon. Noon, of course, news and weather here on SantaCruzVoice.com. And I will be with you once again tomorrow at 9:06 for more of the usual shenanigans. Thanks very much for listening. Thanks even more to those who took the time to call in. I always appreciate hearing from you. See you tomorrow.